Let's talk about NPS today. What are its pros and cons? First things first, what are the returns that NPS has given? So, if you see the 5-year return of NPS equity schemes, tier 1 equity schemes, it is 6.6% CAGR, which is just 2 basis points or 0.2% less than the large cap mutual fund return of 16.8% CAGR. So what this tells you is that the returns of NPS are very similar to large cap mutual funds. And even when you see the structure of NPS, you'll find that something like 80 to 90% of their corpus is invested in large cap stocks, with the balance being in mid cap. So it is very similar. Even in case of large cap funds, you have to invest 80% of their corpus in the top 100 stocks in the large cap stocks. Now the NPS universe is a little bit broader. It's the top 200, but still the pension funds tend to invest in most of their assets only in the top 100, in the very large cap names. Now, a more robust way of comparing returns is rolling returns. Essentially, what this does is it looks at returns over different time periods and then takes an average so that you're not subject to starting point bias. So even there in rolling returns, you will find that NPS return, average return, is 13.5%, which is just 0.1% less than the large cap mutual fund return of 13.6%. It's almost the same. Now, many would argue that in NPS, you cannot go 100% in equity. You have to have some debt allocation as per the rules. And that maximum cap is 75% equity is allowed. So if you take a blended return, 25% debt, 75% equity, even then you are given a respectable 14.1%. Now, some people would say that, well, I want to go 100% in equity and the system is not allowing me to, which is fine. That's a fair criticism. But you can always take more equity in mutual funds, for example, where you are free to go 100% into equity. Financial portfolio adjustment can be done through different products. It doesn't have to be done only through NPS. Now, let's come to the big benefit of NPS, which is tax. So if you're in the old regime, of course, you get NPS deduction up to 1.5 lakhs under Section 80C and 50,000 rupees under 80CCD 1B. If you're in the new regime, you don't get that 50,000 rupees deduction, but that employer contribution, if your employer is offering you NPS and is contributing to your NPS, up to 14% of your basic salary, you do get a deduction, and it's one of the very few deductions available in the new tax regime. So if you can possibly get this, please do. And the reason of taking this deduction is because if you're in the, for example, 30% tax bracket, straight off the bat, you're saving 30%. Now, let's talk about the lock-in. A lot of people are annoyed with it. They don't like the fact that they can't access their own money. NPS Tier 1 is in fact locked in until the age of 60. But I would argue that it's actually a good thing. When you think about retirement, when you think about investing in general, especially in equities or stocks, you are supposed to stay for the long term. There is a lot of talk about doing a 10-year SIP or 20-year SIP and what kind of returns that can give you. In NPS, that lock-in essentially enforces discipline. It forces you to stay for the long term and allows your wealth to compound. It protects you from yourself, essentially. Now, what if you need the money in the interim? What if you fall sick? What if you want to buy a house? Or for all of that, there is something called partial withdrawals permitted in the NPS up to 25% of your contributions. Now, you can take a partial withdrawal in order to buy a house or for medical treatment, or even more interesting reasons like upskilling yourself or launching your own startup. Even those withdrawals are permitted in this 25% partial withdrawal window. And by the way, those partial withdrawals are tax free. You are allowed to make those partial withdrawals after just 3 years in the NPS system. Now, another thing that annoys a lot of people is the annuity. So at maturity, at the age of 60, you have to use 40% of your corpus to buy an annuity of fixed pension payment. The remaining 60% you can withdraw free of tax. Now, People say that the annuity rates are very low and that's a big problem. Again, a valid criticism, but up to a point. So I looked at the annuity rates for a 60-year-old um, who wants an annuity with return of purchase price, meaning that when that person passes away, whatever amount he has used to buy the annuity, his family gets it back. This is called return of purchase price. So that annuity rate, the highest rate, there are several insurance companies uh, in the NPS list, but the highest rate was around 7%, and from very, very respectable insurance companies. You don't have to worry about what's going to happen to that money. Right now, 7%, if you think about it, is not that bad a deal. It's very similar to FD rates. I checked the SBI FD rates, by the way, for senior citizens who are actually given a slightly higher amount. And that amount, the highest rate, is currently 7.5%. So not that different from the NPS annuity rate at 7%. And unlike SBI FD, which is for a set tenure, let's say 5 years or 3 years, this you get for life. So if rates go down, you are in a sense protected with that 7%. Now, the 7% is taxable, but remember, in retirement, your other income tends to go down. You typically don't have salary income. So your tax bracket itself might be lower, and therefore, this 7% annuity. So if you have a 1 crore corpus, you're getting 7 lakhs a year. That will not be taxed much, right? If all you get is 7 lakhs, you won't be taxed at all. Um, Now, one interesting provision in the NPS, which very few people know about, and is, I think, a very, very strong argument for NPS, is Regulation 6 of the PFRDA exits and withdrawals rules. And this says that the balance in your NPS tier 1 account cannot be attached by any court in India, which means that if you are in a legal dispute of whatever nature, marital dispute, or you have creditors, whatever dispute you have, the NPS balance cannot be attached except for a maximum of 25% of your contributions. This kind of protection only two other instruments have in this country. One is Public Provident Fund, the other is Employees Provident Fund, and of course, third is NPS. So take a considered view, don't be led astray by statements on social media. Look at it holistically, and if it fits your risk appetite and your goals, do indeed subscribe to NPS.